the nation. He doesn't say the national cake. He doesn't say resources. He says, just to read for you one example, at page 6 of 85, a government is like a company, government. He's not talking about resources, he's talking about government, and that's all it was. It is important for members to remember, to recall, that these provisions of the law I am sharing with you here followed the famous, or should I say infamous, NAC MOU, which became very litigious. I had the privilege of participating in that case. The famous NAC MOU was set aside because it had no anchoring in law. That was corrected, and that is what these agreements are about. Seventhly, and I think I'll combine this with, although I'll come back to that later, but the Deputy President, in the videos, when you listen to them correctly, says the President needs to work with people who believe in his policy, who believe in his manifesto, who will implement what he had in mind when he campaigned on a specific platform. That's all he's saying. And it's very simple. If you don't believe in my policies, if you don't believe in my manifesto, how are you going to be the one I appoint to implement that? It wasn't about tribes. It was about manifesto, it was about policy, it was about specific issues set out in agreements. Now, political rhetoric might use certain words. Politicians use all manner of words. The party I represented in the last election was called Mganga many times in the campaign trail. But we know he's not a Mganga, you know? So, but it's political talk. Number 8, these agreements were not limited to Kenya Kwanza, as I said, because they're part of the law. The government that preceded Kenya Kwanza, Jubilee, had similar agreements deposited with the Register of Political Parties. Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya, had a similar agreement. It's only that they never got to power, but they had a similar agreement. And the reason for this is that even internationally, these agreements are known as power-sharing agreements. There's no magic to it. That's what elections are about the division of power. That's what it is about. And because of that, these agreements, in fact, do the opposite of what Honorable Mutuse is saying they did. He says they cause disunity. In fact, there are sources of unity when the diverse sectors of the Kenyan society can get together. For example, Kenya Kwanza, I think, had 16 or so parties. Azimio had 25. The different characteristics of Kenyan society are captured in all those parties. That's what coalition building is all about. And it not only works at national level, even at the devolved level, we have what are called negotiated democracy agreements, like these ones, which take into account clans and that sort of thing. Now, my good and friend, Mr. Sifuna, asked a question about what happens to the others who are not mentioned in these agreements. We have a practical example. Members of his party, ODM, are now in government. The party, the contracts left room for accommodation. My good friend,
order. You cannot raise a point of order on the council. You cannot. Council, you have 3 minutes to conclude.
Thank you. I just wanted to set the point that the agreements were dynamic, that politics is dynamic, that these things have a way of settling themselves, and they do. The next point I wish to say, I cannot say, I think he asked me the question about, for example, the constitution requiring PSs and others to be advertised. I cannot speak to how Kenya Kwanza intended to implement that, but like I've demonstrated, it was implemented. They found a way to do it. I don't know how they did it, but we're just speaking to what they did. Honorable Stuart Mazayo asked a question about Chakula Kikiva. You will note that a lot of the videos that were played here today were made in Nandi or in Kericho. There was a very specific reason for that, and the Deputy President himself will be addressing that question today. The only other thing I can tell you about those videos is that whenever the Deputy President raises that question, either in Nandi or in Kericho, he is cheered wildly. it is a very popular issue in those two counties. Finally, I think to a question that was asked about how Honorable Mutuse and others would feel, even regions that did not overwhelmingly vote for Kenya Kwanza, including, for example, Machakos, Makueni, and Kitui, actually got 2 cabinet secretaries in the cabinet in the fullness of time. And so no one was actually discriminated against. This was not about tribes. I think the confusion has been brought about by Mutuse's motion.